This little MacBook Air cost $900. So why did I choose to spend an extra $1,100 on a MacBook Pro 14-inch when this would do everything I could do? Well, let me explain to you some of my differences of why I chose the 14-inch over the Air. Let's get into it. How are you doing today? My name is Malcolm, and if you're new to my channel, thanks for stopping by. In this channel, I mainly talk about photography and photography equipment, but today I'm going to switch it up a little bit and talk to you about why I chose to buy a MacBook Pro 14-inch over an Air, and why it's worth spending the extra money right now than just spending the $900 on the Air. Now, this is the question I came up with when I first initially started looking at them. I was fortunate enough at Christmas to buy the Air for my daughter. Because I did that, I was able to actually get a chance to use it and put it to a real test with my own video edits and do an entire video edit on it. And in that time editing on that computer, I realized this is the way I need to go. Because it worked so well, it was hard for me to justify needing anything more. So how much better could the processor really be on the 14-inch? Now in this video, I'm not going to be talking about the processors. There's really not much difference to them in my experience of what I'm doing. What I do want to tell you about is why I chose to spend the extra money on the 14-inch, what I was looking for in a laptop to get to that point, and why it was worth spending that extra money for it. For me, it was about adding the features the 14 had over the Air to make it more usable in my day-to-day use. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, one of the main reasons why I chose the 14-inch over the Air was not the processor or the M1 Pro. RAM had a little bit to do with it. You can still get the 16 gigs of RAM in the Air if you choose to. So that again is not one of the issues why I chose the 14 over the Air. So the first thing I'm going to touch on for you is the value of the two laptops and what you actually get for that $1,100 extra you pay for the MacBook Pro 14 over the Air. Just to put a baseline in, a 45-minute conversion render, no heavy additional edits, just pretty much a video conversion from 4K to 1080, which was quite taxing on my Windows machine. So that 45-minute video I converted from a 4K file to a 1080 file took my Windows Alienware an hour and a half to complete. Now I did that exact same conversion in DaVinci Resolve on the MacBook M1 Air. The MacBook Air did that render in 13.5 minutes. Now that's not too bad compared to the hour and a half that it took my Alienware to do it. When I did the exact same test on the new MacBook Pro 14-inch, it was only 12.5 minutes. But the base model M1 was, I think it's 7-core CPU, 8-core GPU, did that in 13.5 minutes compared to the 10-core, 14-core GPU the MacBook Pro has in it, and the M1 processor did it in 12.5. So that's only a minute. Now that 1 minute may add up over a lot of time, but I don't think it equates to an extra $1,000 worth of value out of it. Now that is a spec I found out after buying the MacBook Pro, but again, I already knew the Air worked extremely well, and I knew that would handle my workload. So I'm not like super impressed by that minute, and I'm also not going to be disappointed by it that that's only a minute difference, because you get a lot more laptop for that money versus what the Air offers you. So with regards to size of the laptop, that was one of my main requirements, was I had to be the right size laptop for me. I need to be able to fit into my ThinkTank camera bag on a daily basis with my camera gear and to be able to be taken with me. I couldn't do that with my Alienware. So originally I wanted to get the MacBook Pro 16. I mean, that laptop was a beast, and it just seemed like such a great deal for what it was. That was when they were released. That's what I really wanted. After I got my daughter the Air, I realized that small size is where it's at. It was just so much easier to carry from point A to point B. I could fit it in just about anything. That fit in my camera bag. The 16-inch, it probably would fit, but it's quite big. And finally, when I went to go look at them and they finally had them all out on display, I actually realized right away the 16-inch was not for me, and I'd be looking at the 14-inch, which initially I thought that might be a good size, just wasn't quite sure on it. But after seeing it, without a doubt, the 14 was the one for me. It's not much bigger than the Air. There was no real size comparison difference between them, other than the 14-inch Pro is a little bit thicker and it's a little bit heavier. Now the weight wasn't so much an issue for me. My bag's already heavy enough. And I know a lot of you might say, oh, the weight's incredibly important. At that point, the scale of actually just carrying it from what I had was going to be huge. And that's what I was looking at. And be able to just slip it into my camera, into the laptop slot of my camera bag, and have a very powerful editing machine with me all the time was key. That was one of the big things, was the size. All right, the next thing that was really important to me was the screen. I did want the extra resolution that 14 Pros provided on those Retina screens compared to the Air. While the Air screen was gorgeous and it looked really nice, its limited resolution, I believe at 2550 or 2500 or whatever it is limited when you finally open up an editing software such as Capture One or DaVinci Resolve. You have all your toolbars around the screen, but then your actual work area of the screen was much smaller. And if you're trying to be portable and use the laptop as a laptop, that screen resolution gives you a little bit extra room to work with in that screen confine, and it lets you see what you're doing a little bit better. Not that I couldn't get away with that. The Air has the capability of using a dongle to HDMI out to a television or a display monitor, which is what I do in my studio here, as I have a 65-inch on the wall that I edit on. The brightness of the screen wasn't so much of a big factor to me, as I'm usually in the studio working most of the time anyways. Now the screen on the 14 is amazing. When it's turned up and it's fully bright, it looks incredibly crisp. And that's not to say that that was one of the key factors to me. It was more about the resolution of the screen than it was the brightness. Now the brightness is great, little add-on, wasn't one of the things I had to have. The next two features I'm going to talk about aren't super important. They really were like the cherry on top, you could say. The first one's going to be the HDMI port, and the second one's going to be the SD card slot. Talking about the HDMI port, the HDMI port allows me just to plug it straight into my television here, and just having that quick little plug in. I don't even have to plug in the battery or I don't have to plug in the charger at all. It's just that one cord. There's no big dongle to deal with. It makes it really just simple to plug in my HDMI cable and be done with it. It's there on the television. I've got my screen orientations already set from top to bottom, and I can start working. The next one, the SD card reader. The SD card reader, again, it's a luxury. You can get this all through a dongle that plugs into the USB-C on the Air, no problem, and it works great. You'll be able to just plug it directly into the laptop right there and edit off of, or just download and save. Or you can get a larger SD card and use it as an editing file, and you don't have to carry a large dongle per se. You can have a really fast SD card, like a 512 gigabyte, slide it in there, and be able to edit off of it. And you have your work project right there, and it barely sticks out of the laptop, making it much more portable and convenient than having to plug in an entire dongle for your SD card or an external hard drive at that point. And it's solid state, it works quick. It won't be as quick as a regular SSD, but in my experience, it works just fine. Those are my main reasons why I chose to buy the MacBook Pro 14 over the Air. And those are really the main deciding factors for me. It wasn't the processor, it wasn't the RAM. You can get the RAM in the MacBook Air, no problem, if you want to order it that way. So it wasn't that, but there is a benefit to having 16 gigs of RAM over 8, and that may be a topic for another video, but basically the Apple computers, they have what they call, I think, swap memory, which is actually used in the SSD to simulate RAM. And it can be taxing on your SSD over time. Being that I'm buying this laptop for a much longer period of time, say about 5 to 6 years, I wanted the hard drive to make sure it lasted in it. So I've chose the model with the 16 gigabytes of RAM. And I do find that that could be the difference why it works better, but ultimately it works great either way with 8 gigs or 16. So if your budget only lets you go to that Air or maybe a MacBook Pro 13, don't be deterred by that. The processors in all of them are more than capable. Really, it came down to the functionality of what I wanted out of that computer, and the fact that I did want that one to last me a long time. I wanted to buy the one I wanted right now, because that's ultimately what mattered to me, was having the actual laptop that I needed to do the work I need to do and make it convenient and easy for me. Because when it's convenient and easy, things are easier to create and be done with. If you have to struggle or it makes it difficult, that's when I find myself distracted, or I find myself not working, is when there's a lot of work to be involved just to get to the work. So that's all I got for you today. This is the first video of a set of series for this MacBook Pro 14. I hope this video helps you determine which computer is best for your needs. All I can say is don't get hung up on the processor battle between all the computers. Yes, they can be better and more powerful computers, but you don't need it if you're just like a video creator like me, solo creator, somebody, starting out. You don't need a lot. And the M1 Air laptop is more than capable of it. I'd be more than happy with this laptop alone. I did choose to make the investment a little bit further with the higher end model of being the base model 14 that you can buy, strictly on the fact of what I've just discussed in this video. With that being said, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you found it useful, you want to hear more about this kind of content, I do cover photography and that kind of stuff in this channel, hit the subscribe button. I'd be happy to have you on board this channel as the channel continues to grow, and I'll see you in the next video. Talk to you later.